Hello guys, this is a review of the movie Los Ojos de Julia, or The Eyes of Julia in English. It's a psychological thriller by Guillermo del Toro. I'm pretty sure it's a Spanish film. I know for a fact that it's in Spanish, but there are subtitles for those of you who don't speak the language. I'm so excited to do this one because, as you may or may not know, I don't do a lot of psychological thrillers. It's not my preferred subgenre within the horror umbrella. But this one, I am very lucky to say I found at the lower shelf years ago at Walmart, $5, and it's so good. Let's talk about the plot very briefly because it has so many twists and turns that I'd be here all night. So the movie follows the story of Julia. She has a twin sister who she hasn't seen in a long time. Both of them suffer from this disease that over time they lose eyesight to the point where they become blind. She gets this very weird feeling, painful feeling, it looked like, in her throat, and she decides to go visit her sister, only to find that she died of ostensibly suicide by hanging herself. But she's like, no, 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 she wouldn't do it. And she has good reason to believe that she wouldn't die of suicide, that somebody killed her. From an audience standpoint, we know that she didn't die of suicide, but at the same time, we're not really sure if the sister is really crazy or she was in fact killed, because somebody is seen kicking the stool that she was standing on before she hung herself. She was stressed, so it's a lot of explaining for even like the opening scene, right? So she wants to commit suicide. However, there is someone there with her. She is not able to see, but she is able to feel their presence. And she tells him, why do you think I'm going to do this in front of you? You psycho crazy. And then he just kicks it off. So she was just waiting for him to leave, for her not to feel him there in order for her to die, because I feel like she didn't want to give him the pleasure. Anyway, Julia goes there with her husband, and he is very supportive, very loving, but he is not supportive in Julia's idea that the sister didn't die of suicide. He believes that she did, and that Julia is just trying to find something where there's really nothing. So she goes on this search, and we get clues here and there, and in the very end, please, okay, please, 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 if you're even slightly interested in this movie, even slightly, please go watch it before listening to this review. Don't don't do this to yourself. You deserve it. You'll enjoy it. I promise. If you're into thrillers, this is gonna and horror thrillers. If you're into any of that, this is a movie for you, but don't do yourself the disservice of watching my review and hearing all these spoilers. Anyway, in the end, we find out that there is this killer on the loose, and he happens to be the son of a neighbor of Julia's sister's neighbor. And he has this, well, why do I let's start with my opinions, because then I'll never get to my opinions. I think the movie is really good. The movie I watched for the first time years ago, and I haven't rewatched it until now. It was maybe around I don't know, a couple of years, 3 years after I started my DVD collection, which was a long time ago, but it's still like not like the first one, but one of the first films that I purchased. All the people that I recommended to, which haven't been many, have loved it. And I just rewatched it with my mom a few days ago. And I must say this before I continue. So the reason why I was drawn to this film was I would look at it at Walmart. Back then, Walmart had a very big display of movies, DVDs mainly. Blu-rays were not that popular, and they would have huge sections of them. As the years go by, they keep cutting them short, but back then they have like different categories, right? And this one was at the very bottom and it cost $5 if I remember correctly. And I was like, okay, well, let me go get it because my mom's name is Julia and she also has a twin. So I was like, this is going to be really fun. Anyway, so this film, now that I rewatched it, now that I'm an adult and I'm all grown up, I feel like it's so well done and so fun. One of my main problems with thrillers is when they're boring and there's a lot of investigation. What is this? What is that? But to give the protagonist the burden of having to go through everything and show us what she's going through and her doubts and suspicions, that's what makes it very fun. A lot of movies, like I said, focus on, and then now we're going to go to the detective. Now we're going to go here. No, we follow this woman all the time, everywhere. And it's very creepy. I mean, it makes you feel like this person is really being followed instead of just being crazy and paranoid. There is always a possibility. I don't know if they do it on purpose. I'm pretty sure because most thrillers have so many different colors to them. But one of them is the possibility that they both could have been crazy. The one that died and Julia. But obviously, it wasn't the case. She starts investigating and they lead her to this restaurant and nobody knows that she has a boyfriend except for these friends that she made at a support center for people who lost their eyesight or who maybe never saw in the first place. There, she's asking about them and people respond. They say, yes, I know who you're talking about. She left an impression with us because this, because that. But every time she got to the boyfriend, people were like, well, I mean, she did come in with someone. And she's like, well, how did they look? Well, like everybody else, really. There was nothing about him that stood out. He was just like everybody else. They couldn't give her a description. They couldn't say tall, short, um, whatever. They just couldn't, which adds to the craziness of it all, right? It's like, well, is this paranormal type of movie? Is this about something other than what's actually going on or what could happen in the real world? So it raises a lot of questions up until Julia's contact with, I want to say, the janitor. The janitor, we're just going to call him that. It really isn't important, but somebody that works there. He talks to her and explains how there are people that are invisible in the world. And he's one of those people. That's why he's able to remember him because he goes unnoticed. You don't know where he is. He's a shadow. People that don't get attention, don't get love. They people like bump into you. They don't even know what they bumped into. They're like, oh well, let me keep going. This person is so unimportant that they don't even, deserve a double take, or a sorry at least, and excuse me. No, these people are just worthless. Is basically what the janitor is explaining, and he says you have to be very careful because there was so much wrath in this person's eyes because of it, because of being ignored and not seen, and he could be anywhere. He could be here right now. And he's like, he's right here. It's very, very creepy. So she starts running and running and running, trying to find him. And then the next lead is surveillance videos, right? Where the janitor explains that there's a 24/7, camera footage of the place. So she goes over and then the lights turn off. And, well, it's very important to note here that she went with her husband, right? And he, at this point, the night before, they had a very, very touching, beautiful talk about how they met, what they were going to do after she started losing her eyesight, that it didn't matter, what did she want to do. And then he made her promise him like she was just going to stay away from the investigations, that there was nothing there to find. And when they get to that place with the camera footage, he insists, he gets mad, he tells her, I'm gonna go in. So then there's a lot of thought into this, that maybe it was him. And like, I don't want to go over every single scene, because like everything is just so important to the story. And I just be here all night, honestly. I just want to say that it was amazing. And one thing that I do want to talk about is what I was just mentioning, them having the romantic conversation amongst themselves late at night. She remembered what he told her about her eyes, saying that he could see the universe through her eyes. And she's like, are you still able to see them? He's like, yeah. Oh, so romantic, so beautiful, so beautiful. In the end, she is told by the detective that it was him, and that he had an affair with her sister, and he felt so much guilt that he ended up taking his life, and blah blah blah. And she's still like, oh well, rah, rah. And in the very end, she undergoes surgery for her eyes, obviously, and she's actually able to recover and heal. But unfortunately, the killer is still on the loose, pretending to be her nurse. So you're like, what is this craziness? It is very crazy, but it's so good and so believable. You just have to trust me. Very, very awesome. She finds out that the person who donated their eyes to her was her husband. And she remembers back to when he told her that he was able to see the universe through her eyes. And it's so sad, because she ends up losing her sight in the end. Which, I mean, I still love that she was able to see him, or his corpse. But it's so beautiful, very romantic, very crazy in the good sense. Um, this is something that could happen to anyone, unfortunately. I don't think to this extreme, because I don't know, maybe she couldn't run very fast, but I'm pretty sure at some point I'm gonna. But then she was, losing her sight. So that's what made it so much more difficult. The reasoning for this killer, by the way, is that since he was invisible to many people, well, the only people in the world that were able to notice him were the people that didn't have sight, because they could feel his presence, they could smell him, they could touch him. Like other things, they could acknowledge that he was there. And since they didn't really have to look at him, then they don't know really how good, how bad, or how. But it's all definitely, like I said, believable. And it's a sad reality of life when somebody just attaches to you in that way, that you don't get a second to breathe, and you can't live your life a normal way, because there's somebody always lurking, and you always have that paranoia. But the movie has its scary moments, has its romantic moments. Don't be discouraged to watch this if you hate romance in movies, because this isn't what this is about. I feel like the romance is very, I don't know, altogether the romantic moments are probably a minute long, or two. Just, if I had to take a guess. But the impact is so strong, especially if you're someone who believes that you could fall in love with someone so deeply. It sucks. It sucks. Hopefully I never had to experience anything like this in my life, and hopefully it happens less and less in the world, because like I said, it's just terrible. And this film is a roller coaster ride of a lot of intense emotions, but it also gives you that landscape of what these victims have to go through. So it's really interesting, really, really strong. I wouldn't say that this film is for everyone, definitely not. It's for people who like these type of films, the whole thriller, what happened, who did it, how did they do it, why did they do it. That that's the type of people that would really be drawn to this film and would really appreciate it. If you're someone who has experienced trauma and is triggered by these type of topics, and obviously it's not for you. If you didn't already get it by like hearing everything else I just said, it's not for you. I also want to recommend it for kids. They wouldn't even know what's going on, and even if they did, I feel like it's just a lot of, I don't know, it's not cool for younger audiences. But for everybody else, like I said, definitely a must see, because it's a real treat. I can't believe that it really isn't that well known, maybe in its country, but definitely not in the US as far as I know. But I'd recommend it. I give it a rating of 10 out of 10 in its category. And yeah, that's it for this one. Thank you for watching.